Well, let's begin. Well, the conference that today I will give is have the name of Rethinking the Construction and Technological Practice in Architecture, the implementation of the objectives of the United Nations 2030 Agenda. Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure for me being here. I'm from Mexico City, and actually I have my first master in architectural design, and actually I'm pursuing my second, I will begin my second master in parametric design by the Universidad Politécnica de Catalunya in Spain. I have a real passion about the software, the science, and the technological process, and how this could influence for the new agenda of the United Nations. Well, this presentation focusing four main objectives. I will talk about what is the agenda of the sustainable development by the United Nations, what is the problems that the architecture must face today, and about the technological constructive practices that should develop for the next decades. And for last, I will talk about the conclusions about how the architecture will face these new problems during the next decades. First of all, this conference seeks to publicize and make reflection about the new needs that demand architecture, and today how they can generate a link between the practices and the objectives of the Agenda of 2030. It will be a little crazy because when you are you're watching some video about the United Nations developed goals, there are physics, biologists, economists, but there is no architecture, and it is a big problem because the architecture is one of the most important problems that we should change, because it is one of the main problems that give us the CO2 emissions at this moment. Well, as you will know, we have these developed 17 goals by the United Nations that it was said in the 2015, and says that we should face all of these problems. And the big problem is that the architecture is in 4 of these main goals. That is a big important thing that we should develop and change these practices in architecture. Faced with the challenge of the climate change, the science has already provided some of the solution for a secure and sustainable energy supply. Yet is another room for further innovation, such the wide regard for the development and storage of energy efficiency. It is an important thing that the science is in our side to face these problems, and as an architects, we should rethink our process of technological process. Well, this is the chart that I make. This is the efficiency of the materials. What is the main important target for the 2030, and which should be the most important? As we know, the concrete and the steel is one of the most important business in all the world, and the big problem is that this is the one of the most that gave us CO2 emissions to all the world. This is one of the chart. This is the number of the goal that we should change, and we need to make some really important change. This is the reuse of the building components, and this is the material switching. How we can change these new problems. This is the big problem because during this year, the 2021, the United Nations give the new agenda, the new charts, and we can see here in my case of Latin America, I'm from Mexico, and we have a lot of big problems in all Latin America. We can see that we are not making a lot of new investigation and science about these new problems. We are going back, actually. We are in this, the goal number 9, the well-resilient infrastructure. The make cities more important. And the first one is urgent action for the climate change. This is about the world. And we can see that Latin America is going back. Only the developed countries, as the first world countries, are making and are facing these new problems. And it is a very important goal that we should change. Well, what is the architecture facing today? It's a big problem because I will show a quick history of architecture during the last years. We can see the Giza pyramids, where it is one of the most important. It is one of the most important pyramids in all the world. I will dare to say that it is the most important. After that, we have the Colosseum in Rome. Another way that it is really important is the Chichen Itza here in Mexico, and the Hagia Sophia in the Turkey. And this is a very important thing, because how we go from this to this is a big problem, because today all the 1 of 6 people will die in this world because of the pollution of the big cities. And you will say that it is only of problems of small cities or developed countries, but no, this is Los Angeles, this is Mexico City, Beijing, New Delhi. This is a big problem that we should change, because the process of construction make a big difference of these new technologies. This is a very important problem, because today the 55% of the world population lives in urban areas. For the 2050, it will be near from the, we can see the chart, will be 68% of all the population of the world. We can see that in the last 30 years, 50 years, we have a lot of new population. This is a big problem, because we need to make a lot of change. About the architecture, we are making the 40% of energy, resources, waste, and consumption energy. It's a big problem. This is one of the charts that it is of the UN that says how the new technologies are changing and how the architecture and the building construction should change, because we can see that we have 39% of all the emission of CO2, and we have the 36% of energy, and it is an important thing that we should change through the technology and the science. A big problem is, as you will know, the actually architecture, construction, engineering may use a lot of cement. And when we produce 1 ton, we're making a ton of CO2. Cement is the source of about the 8% of the world carbon dioxide. Imagine with the cement and the steel, it's actually the 20% of the emissions of the CO2. This is a very problem, because we are going to face every month for the next 4 years 1 New York City. When in the last 3 decades, only there was 10 megacities. Actually, there are 65 megacities actually. Imagine all the problems that we are going to face. Actually, this is a photo, a picture of the metro subway. Imagine all the people. Actually, the metro in Mexico took 8 million people for every day, and this is going to increase for the next decades. Where did it all start? In the Industrial Revolution, because we changed a lot of things. It began in the Europe and after the United States, with the transition included from the hand production methods to machines to chemical manufacturing and iron productions. Well, this is begin the new way on architecture, and it is the most important thing, because we make the home insurance building that it is the first skyscraper. Imagine that, the first skyscraper, and we introduced the steel and the concrete to this new architecture. This is an example of the Empire State, the use of the steel frame, but we doesn't understand about the big problems about the emissions. As we can see, this is a chart that began in the Industrial Revolution, and we can see how the line chart begin making a lot of new emission of CO2. As this point, we can see that the beginning of the coronavirus, we begin to go down. This is a chart about how the materials are making this CO2 emission, and we can see how the aluminum, fiberglass, zinc, that it is all these are materials for the construction. And this is the important thing, how we can introduce the science and technology to the architecture. Actually, we are going to digital fabrication, computational design, materials, and sustainability. We are looking for the industrial revolution. This is a timeline about how it is the industrial revolution, and we are facing these new problems: environment, currently 3D printing, and this is how we are going to face these new problems. This is an example how we are making new architecture through robots, and it is an important thing that we should develop. This is one of the case of studies, the research pavilion in Stuttgart, Germany. It is one of most important things. You can see that actually the construction is taking these new robots and drones and digital fabrication. It is a new way to design the architecture. This is Antonio Guterres, the Secretary of the United Nations, that says that the technology and the science is necessary to face the climate change. And we have to make a lot of effort through the science and the technology and knowledge to against the climate change.
Sir, you have a few minutes to conclude, please.
Yes. Let's think about how we are going to search, how we are going to end this new era. There are countless examples of how the transformation ideas have made a lot of efforts. We are in a crucial crisis that we should change or we're at the rethink how the architecture is affecting the environment. And I want to end this with a quote of Albert Einstein that in the midst of every crisis lies in the great opportunity. This means that we have to change our way that we design architecture and introduce new technologies, new science to give a new way of designing architecture and making more efficient buildings that we have never done before. And thank you for the invitation. It's a real pleasure. If there is any that I can help you, well, there is my social media, my mail, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very wonderful presentation. And this is really the need of the time for architecture, for the civil engineering, all from, I would say, from all disciplines of engineering and medicals, and as well as the business communities also come together and shake hands for the sustainable and the green environment, which is also one of the United Nations goal for sustainability, because the sustainability is not only to in the materials or in the engineering, but also in the business and in the other discipline as well, and the social sciences as well. Thank you very much for a very good presentation. Uh, I would go to the audience first if they have any question for you. Please, if there is any question, you can ask. I'm afraid there is no question for you, but where I wanted to know, since your this paper, which is overall reflecting the very general overview of the all sustainability goals in the architecture, would you mind to just wanted to specify on the certain things, because you are talking about on the concrete, on the aluminium, and there are several other architectural materials. Okay, so this paper is, or is this a review paper or a conceptual paper, or this is just United Nations goals for 2030s, and this is a general overview paper?
Well, actually, I want to focus on the agenda because, as you know, I live in Mexico City. It's one of the most populated cities in the world. And
but I'm sorry to say, but you did not correlate anything related to Mexico in your work. This is just a general overview. I mean,
no, it's general. It's general.
Yes, for the smoke, for the environment pollution, even you have mentioned Delhi, but you couldn't mention anything related to Mexico. So what I wanted to tell you about, if you wanted to come out with something about the Mexico, you must also have to find the problems, environments in the Mexico, their architecture problem, their construction problem, how much pollution and they are creating, and they are including to the environment, like maybe Mexico cement industry, maybe the Mexico, this one, the fire or this other environmental things. And the second most important thing, how much the forestry is helping to reduce this pollution. So I was just wanted to add these things. If this paper can be more narrowed down to your own country perspective, That will be a very good work for you. Rather than you just go and generalize each and every country. Yes, we can do it. But let's suppose if we start from our own country and to find the problems and then also give us some solutions to address how to address this solution based on the United Nations sustainability agenda. So that will be a very great for you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much, sir. And once again, I really appreciate your work. Is a very good, but where it's a very good, it's a very general.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, sir. And now I wanted, yes, there is a one question, which is, yes, please. Sumaya, you wanted to ask question?
Yes, I actually had one question in mind. Well, with regards to the SDG, right? The Sustainable Development Goal, which was made in the UNGAS special session, is by all right, it is a generalized agenda. The whole agenda itself was generalized, and to me, at least, it makes sense. My question is that architecture in place, since the SDGs are generalized, architectures in places of conflict, such as Afghanistan, if you take the PRTs in Afghanistan, right, have been halted because it is a place of conflict. So my question is that, my question is that if architecture in countries, backward countries which are worse off, right, is important, would the compromisations of SDGs would it be applicable there? As in, it is important to build in those countries, but how will you keep in mind the sustainable development goals when you build in those countries?
Well, very good question. The big problem in the case of Mexico, I will talk, and in Latin America, as Mexico, we are the same countries. We have almost the same government, the same ideas, and it's a big problem because the government says that we are a first world country, but we doesn't have the laws, the anything like Switzerland, Singapore, as the first world countries. And it's a big problem because, as you say, the cities will continue. I cannot say how the cities will be in the next 30 years. It's impossible because we are going to face, I don't know, another pandemic, war, economic. It's a big problem. I don't know. There is no a line that will say how the cities will be during the next problem, the next years. But one of the most important things that we should think is that we have to introduce and change our way that we are making architecture. We cannot continue making architecture that we have been doing for the last 2 centuries. After the Industrial Revolution, our mindset changed and think that we are the owners of all the world, but that's not. We are not the owners of this world. We have to change how we are making our rainforest, how we are making that the water be more, all the sustainability problems. And this is a big problem because we should think the main important thing of sustainability is becomes from local, regional, and from the state, and after from the nations. We have to make a little change in all these areas from the outside of the urban areas, and we have to make this little change to go from regional, because it's not the same scenario in Mexico like in Brazil or New Delhi or Afghanistan. It's a different way of sustainability. We have different new needs from other countries. That's a real topic. And we have to think like the sustainability will face problem in a local area, not in general area. It's a big problem. And how these new cities will develop, it's a big question, because as actually during these years, we have seen that the pandemic could change our lives in so quickly.
Thank you very much, sir. We get your point, but due to the time constraint, I'm very much appreciate the way you have addressed the issues and the way you have answered the question. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry because due to the time.